Greetings, fellow moviegoers, and welcome to Movie Central, the place to talk about movies, TV shows based on movies, toys based on movies, games based on movies, and rides based on movies. I'm your host, Mr. CCS, and this is my pet gorilla, George. Welcome to the third and final parts of my retrospective on Star Wars The Clone Wars, and also, welcome to my season finale. Today, I'm going to review the seventh and final season that this show has to offer. But first, a bit of history. When Disney bought Lucasfilm back in 2012, it was announced that the Clone Wars was set to end. Fans were immediately disappointed, as the show had done so much right, including creating new characters, expansions on existing ones, new intriguing storylines, and gave the clones actual character. And it was clear there was a lot more of the show to come out. But unfortunately, after the sixth season on Netflix, that was it. All we had now were leaks and unfinished animations of what could have been. So many questions were left unanswered, and fans were not happy. All the fans had but semi-answers in the follow-up series, Star Wars Rebels, which is a show that by the time I'm writing this, I have not finished watching yet. However, at San Diego Comic-Con 2018, fans were in for a big surprise when the trailer showcased the return for the show. After years of waiting, fans finally got a new season and true closure. The season was then announced to have 3 4-episode arcs focusing on the end of the war and leading into a new era, and was finally released after great anticipation on Disney Plus in 2020. And today, we're going to discuss each of the 3 arcs in detail as we take a look at Star Wars The Clone Wars, the final season. Let's get into it. Initially planned to be a part of the cancelled later seasons of the original run, this arc was finished and was able to see the light of day, and fans enjoyed it so much that the characters introduced here got their own spin-off show in 2021, which I also haven't watched by the time you are watching this. But what's the plot of the arc? Well, it's quite simple. Since the Separatists can predict the actions of the clone troopers, the Republic calls in a squad of unpredictable clones called the Bad Batch, consisting of the leader Hunter, the Brains Tech, the Brawn Wrecker, and the Wisecracker Crosshair. With the help of Anakin Skywalker and Captain Rex, the Bad Batch must take down Wat Tambor and Admiral Trench, a character who hadn't appeared as a major character since the second season. Now, I think this is a great arc because this arc has some of the best action I've seen in the entire show in regards to big battles. But before I talk about that, I want to talk about the Bad Batch's characters. For some reason, I've always compared these guys to the Teenage Mutant Ninja Turtles. Hunter is the stern leader compared to Leonardo, Tech is the nerdy scientist compared to Donatello, Wrecker is the overly buff powerhouse who has a bit of a soft side compared to Raphael, and Crosshair is the wisecracker compared to Michelangelo. However, with those comparisons aside, these characters were a ton of fun. Wrecker having a fear of heights was hilarious and didn't take away from the tone that the episode was trying to give up. What I also loved about this episode was the return of Echo. I mentioned that he had a pseudo-death scene in Season 3, but it turns out he survived his injuries and became a prisoner of war for the Separatists. And yes, seeing him back put a big smile on my face because I love the character. As for the action scenes, well again, they were superb. They were beautiful to look at and always had me on the edge of my seat. There was even some violence to be offered in this episode arc too, such as Anakin embracing his inner dark side and killing Admiral Trench. Do I smell a Vader, anyone? So overall, the Bad Batch arc was very good, and a very good welcome return to the show. Oh, before I move on, it's implied that Obi-Wan knows Anakin and Padme are a couple. That makes sense to the characters. Okay, moving on. Alright, I know a lot of people don't like this arc, and consider it not only the weakest arc of the season, but also consider it unnecessary and downright awful. My thoughts? Well, is it the weakest of the 3 arcs the season has to offer? Yes. Is it that bad? No, not at all. I think the most important part about this arc is not the relationship Ahsoka builds with the Martez sisters, although that was nice to see, but the Jedi Order and their ways to cope with the losses of the citizens. We always thought the Jedi were selfless, but this arc gives us into a look into what the Jedi are to the civilians. I thought it was nice to see, especially because Ahsoka left the Jedi Order at the end of the 5th season. As for characters introduced, the Martez sisters were fun to watch and the shenanigans they get into. And while some of the decision making they do can be pretty stupid, seriously, why would you dump the spice? It's character growth, and I'll be honest, I wouldn't mind reading a solo story about them in the future. I say read because God forbid I see them on screen again. I think once is enough on screen. Anyways, does this arc have anything else that is significant? Well, the action sequences are pretty fun to watch, and Darth Maul's cameo was awesome. But I have nothing else to say about it. It's the weakest of the arcs, but it's far from bad. It's pretty good overall, but I doubt it's rewatchable. Yeah, I didn't have a lot to say about this one, but that is not the case for the third and final arc of the season that not only concludes the show, but also helps conclude the entire prequel era of Star Wars. Now, you may have thought this show wouldn't have taken such a risk at the end, but it did with the stellar finale of... This may sound crazy, but The Siege of Mandalore is one of the best Star Wars stories ever told. Not only does it conclude a show full of amazing storylines and characters, but also helps end the prequel era for Star Wars, as the arc makes a surprising choice of tying into Episode 3, Revenge of the Sith. You have to remember this, the original 2D animated Clone Wars show ended right before Revenge of the Sith took place, so I'm assuming fans thought this would be the same idea, but instead the events coincide with one another to easily tell one of the greatest and most important Star Wars stories ever told. Now, this arc has an amazing structure, as it starts just like a normal episode of the show, with the battle taking place and Anakin pulling his usual shtick of cheating. That is until he sees Ahsoka again. And bear in mind that that the last time these two saw each other was when she left the Jedi Order, so this is big for him, as he finally sees his surrogate sister for the first time in months. Sadly, their reunion is cut short, when Anakin and Obi-Wan are called to action to rescue the Chancellor, which of course is the opening to Revenge of the Sith. But before he leaves, Anakin gives Ahsoka one last gift, her lightsabers, which have been modified but still hers nonetheless. We then see Anakin for the last time in this show, smiling at Ahsoka, and this shot alone is heartbreaking, because not only do we know that Anakin is going to turn into Darth Vader, but we also know that this is the last time Ahsoka sees Anakin before they reunite in that heartbreaking scene from Rebels. That is a very effective way of foreshadowing, and I did not notice that until recently. But back to the arc. Ahsoka, Rex, and the clone troopers travel to Mandalore to take it back from Death Watch, the Crimson Dawn, and the main villain of the arc, Darth Maul. Darth Maul has completely changed from his first appearance back in 1999, from being the silent brute assistant to the conductor of one of the most important and largest battles in the history of Star Wars. And a realization swept over me while watching this arc. Darth Maul was the main villain of the prequel era, and we didn't know that until just now. There's a scene in which Maul is talking to Ahsoka about why he orchestrated the war on Mandalore, and it was to lure out Anakin in an attempt to kill him, since Maul sensed at the beginning that Anakin would turn to the dark side and he would attempt to overthrow Darth Sidious out of fear. That is a very smart motivation and was written extremely well. This leads to one of the best lightsaber battles, not only this show, but also the entire saga. Ahsoka vs. Darth Maul gains many points from me for many reasons. For one, the emotion behind the fight is so well implemented. We know what's going to happen, and after hearing why Maul orchestrated the war, that is not surprising. For another, the scene was filmed entirely through motion capture, even getting Ray Park, who played Darth Maul in The Phantom Menace, to perform mocap to give Maul the best movements possible. Seriously, this fight scene in the second episode of the arc was superb. And of course, when Maul cries out in distress about the events that are about to happen, You feel afraid, seeing as how Darth Maul, one of the most frightening figures in the Star Wars universe, is afraid of what's about to happen, and that gets to me. Of course, the clones stun Maul and take him in as prisoner, which not only ends the battle, but also ends the war as a whole. Anakin killed Count Dooku, Obi-Wan destroyed General Grievous, and Ahsoka captured Darth Maul. All the main puppet masters of fractions of the war have been killed or captured. Ahsoka and Rex then reflect on the war now that it's over, and they share a very nice moment as friends. And just when you think the nice moments will continue, you get a brutal punch to the gut when Ahsoka senses Anakin's turn to the dark side. And then it happens. The moment every Star Wars fan dreaded since the beginning of the show. The Emperor sends out his message telling the clones to execute Order 66. And this scene was heart-wrenching. Ahsoka hiding throughout the Republic cruiser to hide from the clones broke my heart. She had a tight bond with Rex and several other clones, and now they're all attempting to hunt and kill her. This, of course, leads to even more heartbreaking and shocking moments, such as Ahsoka letting Darth Maul out of his cell to distract the clones and escape. Eventually, she helps Rex remove his Order 66 chip, and together the two hunt down the remaining clones and kill them. What hurts more is that Rex was close with the clones as well, and has tears in his eyes since he has to kill his brothers, which makes the clones equal victims of the war as well, and makes you despise the Emperor even more, which also makes his death in Return of the Jedi much more satisfying. The last few moments of this arc to follow are also superb. Ahsoka and Rex fighting for their lives, the destruction of the Republic cruiser, and many other aspects make these final moments so good. And then we have the ending, in which Ahsoka and Rex bury the Fallen and fake their deaths to go out into hiding, which, seeing as how fans got so close to these characters, broke our hearts. But the epilogue also hits hard too, as we see the age of the Empire has begun, and we see Darth Vader, who had been teased over and over in earlier throughout the show, finally made an appearance. We remember all the dread we felt throughout the seasons of the show leading up to this moment, and it finally occurred. But there is hope. Darth Vader finds Ahsoka's lightsabers and remembers this was the last gift he gave to Ahsoka in his past. And we get to see that Anakin Skywalker still lives inside of Vader as he ignites the lightsaber, showcasing that there is still good in him. The first thought I had once I finished this arc was, wow, what an ending. This is not only one of the best arcs in the entire show, but the two best episodes of the show, The Phantom Apprentice and Shattered, came from this arc. What else can I say? The Siege of Mandalore is that good. And I'd say, if you're watching the show as a whole, watch the final arc in one sitting. It is very much worth it. So overall, the final season of Star Wars The Clone Wars is perfect. While not my favorite season, it is still close to the fourth season. I'd say watch this season if you're a fan of Star Wars, but especially the finale. A lot of shows drop the ball with their finales, but Star Wars The Clone Wars is one of those shows that didn't. It's also one of the few shows that got better in its later seasons. So overall, if you haven't seen The Clone Wars, take your time and watch it. It's a long journey, but I tell you, it will be worth it. And I give the final season of the show a 10 out of 10. And the show as a whole gets a 9.5 out of 10. The Force is strong with this one. Well, that's it for my 3-part retrospective on Star Wars The Clone Wars, and that's it for this season. It took me an entire month to write this 3-parter, but I hope it will be worth it. I'll be taking a break until October 20th, so feel free to revisit this animation vacation when you have a chance. With that said, my name is Mr. CCS, you're watching Movie Central, and that, my friends, is a wrap. See you guys in a month.